It's Cougar Sports Saturday.
That's caught! Touchdown! Stayed inside the boundary and gets in for 6.
Cougar Sports Saturday, a presentation of KSL Sports.
Richie right to the rim, driving score! He would not be denied!
BYU Sports Talk by Cougar fans for Cougar fans. Sponsored by Any Hour Services, Electrical, Plumbing, Heating, and Air. Your hosts are Mitch Harper and Kyle Ireland. On Utah's legacy home of the Cougars, KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM and 1160 AM.
Welcome back into Cougar Sports Saturday, powered by KSL Sports. We are getting you ready for BYU versus Cincinnati at 6 p.m. live here on KSL News Radio and the KSL Sports app. It is now time for 3 and Out. Mitch, just like every single drive in football, we start things off with first down. And for first down, we look at a stat to watch for today's game. Mitch, why don't you kick things off for us? What stat are you looking at for BYU versus Cincinnati?
Well, I think running the football is a big piece to this game today, Kyle. I'm going to go with the number 5.09, and you're hearing that and thinking probably it's a deep cut, and it kind of is, but I bring it up because it highlights how this team and BYU can wear their opponents down. BYU averages 5.09 yards per carry in the fourth quarter, and I think this is the type of game that's probably going to be a fourth quarter game. BYU is really good in that space, and they will wear you down with guys like L.J. Martin and Bear Bachmeier who make big-time plays in the final frame. 24 carries have been for more than 10 yards in the fourth quarter. So chunk yardage comes on the ground from BYU. Watch for the Cougars to have success running the football, particularly in the fourth quarter. What about for you? What's the stat to watch?
Yeah, my stat this game is 69, Mitch, and that is nice. Cincinnati averages 69 penalty yards per game, which ranks 130th in the FBS. They give up a bunch of defensive pass interference and defensive holding penalties, and I think that Bear Bachmeier is going to exploit that today. I do think that BYU is going to be able to throw the ball pretty effectively against the Cincinnati team. I think they're going to be able to run the ball as well, but I look for Bear to have a nice passing performance following up his big game against TCU a week ago. Expect it to be one of those West Virginia, Iowa State, TCU type of passing games from BYU, and I think that this cornerback group from Cincinnati is one that's going to be a weak spot for the Bearcats, but that's my stat. Second down, Mitch, we look at players to watch, and I'll kick this one off. My players to watch for this game. For Cincinnati, I'm going to give them some love on special teams. Their kicker, Steven Rusnak, is 12 of 13 this season on field goals. He's perfect, 42 of 42 on extra points. The one thing with him is they haven't used him for any 50-plus yard kicks this season, Mitch. So if BYU can get them into a spot where, they're looking at, 40 yards to go or something like that, I think BYU is going to be in a spot where maybe they're looking to get a stop on fourth down and flip the field kind of near midfield. So that's something that I'm going to keep an eye on today. And then L.J. Martin is my player to watch for BYU. I thought that he had a nice bounce-back performance against TCU, 88 yards on the ground. He looked a little bit healthier. We talked about, his confidence coming back after that, down performance against Texas Tech a few weeks ago. But LJ is at 912 yards this season on the ground. I expect him to surpass the 1,000-yard mark today.
He better, because that would be 88 yards, and BYU needs every bit of those yards from L.J. Martin on the ground today. For Cincinnati, players to watch for me, definitely starts with their quarterback, Brendan Sorsby, who's been in a bit of a slump, and he's dealing with an ankle injury that he's downplayed. I'm curious to see how he moves around because his ability, he's at his best when he can run and get out of the pocket. He's only been sacked 3 times this year. But how severe is that ankle? Again, he downplayed it this week to the media in Cincinnati, but curious to see how he looks and how effective he is. His quarterback rating has been cut in half from the beginning of the year where he started out strong. Now it's been really lackluster in the month of November. Also to watch for Cincinnati, Dante Corleone, the Godfather. There was a great sign at Big Noon Kickoff today where Cincinnati fans said, the bear can run loose, but you always have to pay up to the Godfather. I thought that was kind of good, just the play off of names in this game. So keep an eye on Corleone. And I think Dante, too, said he would have been a BYU fan growing up if he wasn't playing at Cincinnati. He said that to BYU TV back at Big 12 Media Days. So props to the Godfather and his respect for BYU for that. And then for BYU, I'm going to go with Cialia Serra at middle linebacker. And I say that because Max Alford, the reserve middle linebacker, is out this week with an injury. So Ciale is the number one guy, and Ciale at times has been a little bit banged up where it looks like he's been dealing with an arm injury. Never has missed extended time, but has missed stretches of play during this season. And the backup to Ciale is Pearson Watson. So just something to monitor in terms of snap count, the availability throughout the game of Cialia Serra, how impactful can he be, because when he's on the field, he's really good. And then on the offensive side, BYU gets back a wide receiver in Cody Hagan, who is a really dynamic player, particularly in the ground attack. The third leading rusher for BYU this year. It's L.J. Martin 1, Bear Bachmeier 2, and number 3 is a wide receiver, that being Cody Hagan. He returns. Can BYU pop off a big play with Hagan out of the backfield? That's something to watch. Let's get to third down. Bold predictions. What do you got as a bold pick for this game today, Kyle?
Yeah, Mitch, I look at BYU really getting after the quarterback today. Brendan Sorsby, he's only thrown 4 interceptions this season, only been sacked 3 times, and I think that BYU is going to be able to help those numbers go up a little bit for Sorsby in a negative way. I think that BYU picks him off a couple of times, but I'm going to say that as far as sacks are concerned, I think BYU matches that total for the season for Cincinnati's offensive line. I think that BYU's defense is going to get 3 or more sacks today to match that season total. It's going to be a tough task because this offensive line for the Bearcats has been pretty effective, but I really, really like how BYU's defensive line, that front 7, the linebackers have been flying in. JT, Keanu Tanavasa, like all these guys have been getting a lot of push and have been really effective as far as creating quarterback pressure in the last month or so.
And Tausili Akana is surging, and Hunter Clegg, Logan Latui. I think what's awesome, too, Kyle, is that BYU's defensive line, aside from John Talmoy-Payau and Logan Latui, they could all run it back next year, and they're trending up in a great way. So that's exciting, not only for the stretch run this season, but I think in the future if all these guys want to run it back. For me, the bold prediction is every red zone appearance for BYU today ends with a touchdown. So I think BYU capitalizes when they are in the red zone and they finish drives with a TD. BYU's had 43 red zone attempts this year, 13 of which have ended with field goals. They've had 40 conversions in the red zone. They've been really good inside the red zone this year, but you want to get touchdowns. And I say this too, Kyle, because I'm not a full believer in style points. I know Urban Meyer was referencing that today, saying style points. BYU can, if they can get some style points, that can impress the committee. I don't feel like that applies to BYU like it did for his Ohio State teams, because we all know the logos just hit a little different with BYU compared to OHIO. Like, it just doesn't register the same way. So for BYU, though, it doesn't hurt the cause. I don't know how much of an impact it will have, but it sure would be nice to get a little bit of style points. So the Cougs, when they're in that red zone, they capitalize with touchdowns every time they visit the red zone. And hopefully for BYU and for Kalani Sitake and crew, that's frequent and often today here at Nippert Stadium. We're counting down to BYU versus Cincinnati, the 9-1 Cougars versus the 7-3 Bearcats. Both teams have Big 12 championship game stakes on the line. We'll take our final break. Score predictions next. Here from the Queen City, it's BYU and Cincinnati. Extended pregame here on Cougar Sports Saturday on the legacy home of the Cougars, KSL News Radio.